Do y'all feel higher? Woo! It was good. No, that was at a temple, a Jewish temple. Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to go with our first slide here, kind of bringing some continuity from the message that was shared last week on freedom. And y'all remember I brought in the definition of freedom, such as from, we talked about what freedom feels like for each one of you and the definition of freedom and how what we think and what our consciousness is and what our awareness is and our environment, everything and every aspect of our life plays such a huge role in how we define that word and how we experience it. So that's what we talked about last week. So I'm bringing up this slide as kind of an intro to what we're going to do a deeper dive in this week and today. So the mind is a powerful force. It can enslave us or empower us. It can plunge us into the depths of misery or take us to the heights of ecstasy. Learn to use the power wisely. And that's an invitation. You don't have to. You don't have to learn to use the power wisely, although I'm sure that we could all share some stories of what that feels like when we don't. And that's truly the definition of wisdom, right? That's how we learn and grow. So we are doing a deep dive today into the freedom to rise, elevating our consciousness, expanding our life. We are energetic beings living in an intelligent universe. And the frequency of our consciousness influences everything that we experience. What if the key to greater freedom isn't working harder? What if it's learning to rise higher? What if? Our lives don't simply reflect what happens to us. They reflect the level of consciousness from which we respond. Elevating our thoughts, expanding our awareness, and aligning with the higher frequencies of love and compassion and creativity, what does that do? It transforms not only how we see the world, but the world that we create. What if freedom is not a destination? What if it's a frequency of consciousness? Does that give you the shivers? Ooh. Think about that. The frequency of consciousness. Every thought that we think, every belief that we hold, and every choice that we make either anchors us in limitation or lifts us into greater possibility. Now, I said every thought, every belief, every word. Not just the one on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Not just the ones after you leave here. It's every thought, it's every word, it's every belief. And as we raise our inner frequency, remember what that's all about, freedom, true freedom. As we raise our inner frequency, we naturally rise into greater freedom, deeper love, and the limitless life Spirit has always intended for us. So I've really been working with this week. It came to me that it really, for me right now, it's about me rising above the limits. It's rising above what limits me, what I perceive limits me, what I think limits me. It's rising above that so that I can awaken what liberates me. Because I have found that that which limits me is there to actually awaken what liberates me. Let's chew on that for a second, right? Right? Yet that only works if we're paying attention, right? Conscious awareness. So you know how I always like to start out with something funny. You guys probably thought I forgot, right? You're like, oh, she's just going to dive right into the talk and she didn't give us anything funny yet, right? I purposely planned it that way. So let's go to the next slide. So here we have, along with antimatter and dark matter, we have recently discovered the existence of doesn't matter, which appears to have no effect on the universe whatsoever. Now that is funny, right? But not that I want to pop your balloon right now or anything. I don't want to do that. But here's the thought. Things do matter, don't they? Because what happens when we take on this idea that it just doesn't matter? Yeah, we might feel a little bit of relief. We might feel a little bit of freedom. We might feel all of that because we've let go of responsibility. But as we have seen, let's say, for example, previous elections, when people think things don't matter, they really do. Or if you think, oh, it doesn't matter if I get up and walk today, or it doesn't matter, fill in the blanks. It really does matter. So that's a little trick of play on the humor slide there. Because the question then is, what really matters? What really matters? So just sit with that for a second, in within yourself, because your answer is probably going to be different than mine and your neighbor, or it might not be. But what really matters? Because that, my friends, is what's going to drive every aspect of your consciousness, and therefore it's going to drive your freedom. It can be easy to forget that we are in control of our reality, and that our reality is not made up of outside influences. We talked about that last week. But that it actually consists of our thoughts, beliefs, and mindset. Joe Dispenza states that if an atom is 99.9999999% energy and only 0.01% is matter, then we are nothing more than we are something. Right? So why do we apply so much of our attention to the physical world when we are so much more? We are so much more than the physical world. What really matters? So, this reminds me of a book, Power versus Force, by David Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins. How many of you know that book, have read that book, know a little bit about that book? Okay, there's a small smattering in here. So that helps me know how much of a deep dive I want to do into that. Dr. David Hawkins teaches that there are two fundamentally different ways of moving through life: force and power. Force comes from the ego. It is rooted in fear, control, struggle, and the belief that we must manipulate life to get what we want. Force depletes our energy because it is disconnected from our true spiritual nature, even though we know we can never be disconnected from our true spiritual nature, right? But it sometimes sure can feel that way. And that's what force, going through ego, can lead us to feel. Power, by contrast, arises naturally from alignment with our divine self. It flows through love, integrity, compassion, gratitude, and truth. Rather than pushing against life, power works with the intelligence of the universe. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply expresses itself. It just bees. From a new thought perspective, power is not something that we achieve, it is something we awaken to. As we align with the presence of God within, our lives become less about striving and more about allowing. So let's do a deep dive into these levels of consciousness. I don't want to put the next slide up yet, because then they'll just read it and they won't listen to me. So no offense, but I know how I am, so I just gotta guess that's how you would be. I'm going to do a little bit of a sampling, and then we're going to put the slide up. Dr. David Hawkins developed a map of the levels of human consciousness that uses a muscle testing method called applied kinesiology. You all know what applied kinesiology is? Ever been to a naturopath or a natural physician that uses that? A lot of times chiropractors use it, or It's energy work. It's fabulous and wonderful. It's muscle testing. It's applied kinesiology. It's really wonderful if you can find a health professional that uses applied kinesiology. I have found that under my own personal experience. So he used applied kinesiology to document the nonlinear spiritual realm. Isn't that interesting? The research was scientifically validated and published in Dr. Hawkins' doctoral dissertation titled Qualitative and Quantitative Analysis and Calibrations of the Level of Human Consciousness. Now that was a mouthful. Yeah, so I'll try to lighten it up a little bit here. Hawkins described consciousness as a spectrum of awareness. Lower levels such as shame, guilt, fear, anger, and pride are contracted states that keep us focused on separation, limitation, and survival. Now go with me here because I'm going to be making some points that there might be an aha a little bit later on. Higher levels such as courage, courage, willingness, acceptance, love, joy, and peace expand our awareness and reconnect us with the divine nature. The turning point, Dr. Hawkins says, is courage, where we stop seeing ourselves as victims of life and we begin recognizing ourselves as conscious creators. It's that kingdom where we move from everything is happening to me to everything is happening for me. And I'm a part of that, right? It's empowering. We get to play a role instead of it happening to us, and we're unconscious about it. The goal is not perfection or climbing a ladder. Rather, it is continually choosing thoughts and beliefs and actions that reflect greater love, wisdom, and unity. As our consciousness expands, our perception changes. And because consciousness is creative, our experience of life changes as well. So in essence, we don't raise our consciousness to become more spiritual. That is why. We raise our consciousness to remember that we have always been expressions of the divine. And I certainly want to know more about being that so that I can play more in that. That's my own personal take on it. So now we'll put the slide up. The levels of consciousness. We're going to do a little bit of a dive on that. So briefly, each level of consciousness coincides with determinable human behaviors and perceptions about life. Each level represents a corresponding attractor field of varying strength that exists beyond our three-dimension reality. There's a critical point within each level of consciousness from which its field gravitates. Think magnet. The numbers on the scale represent logarithmic calibrations. You'll get a little heady here for a second. Measurable vibratory frequencies on a scale which increase to the 10th power. That's what that means.
It's not double, it's
Exponential, yes. And of the levels of human consciousness and its corresponding level of reality. The numbers themselves are arbitrary, so don't get caught up with the numbers. They're just really there as a significance to show the relationship of one number to the next number. And on this scale, Dr. Hawkins uses from 1 to 1,000. So each level will affect you depending on what level you are at. So each level will affect you depending on what level you are at. So let's give some examples. State of fear. State of fear, which is right there, 100, may look quite undesirable if you are at the state of desire. However, if you are at the state of guilt, which is 30, being around people at the state of fear, which is 100, is actually beneficial for you, as it can help you elevate to a higher level. It is generally more effective when you are around people at higher consciousness levels, that are operating at higher consciousness levels, which are closer to your level versus a huge distance ahead, since it is easier for your energy level to reach resonance with theirs. So when the people are too distant from you and their energies, it may result in detachment and alienation instead. Yet, the reason why I'm pointing this out in such detail there, because did you have a little bit of an aha? Because could you think maybe when yourself or people around you or an experience that you've had in the past where, like, well, why are all these people coming together in fear? What's attracting them? What's drawing them in this basis and this energy of fear? Well, they're most likely coming from being in shame or guilt or apathy or grief, and they've moved into fear, right? So this helps me kind of understand or answer some of the why questions, which, by the way, sometimes why questions are a quick trip to hell. But it helps to answer some of the why questions right now that we see playing out in our world. Like, you ever catch yourself going, why are these people fill in the blanks? Well, it could be, and I believe that we're always waking up to a higher level of conscious awareness. So it may be that they're waking up to a higher level of conscious awareness of where they were. Because that's what we're all doing, right? So we're all connected. We're all unified. We leave no person out. So I bet that's why they're doing it. Kind of lands a little better, doesn't it? Other than, oh, they're just out of their mind or fill in the blanks. It lands better. If my analytical mind and my spiritual consciousness mind can kind of come to terms with why groups of people do or think the way they do or think. So it's just helpful. So where am I? Because here we go. All right. So on the same note, when you elevate yourself to a higher level, it becomes obvious that the lower levels are more limiting. That, we have to elevate to a higher level to realize that. While we're in it, we don't typically realize that. Right? Maybe? Am I hitting on any cylinders here at all? Okay, good. I'm seeing some head nods. For example, if you're at the level of pride, so let's find pride, which is right before you go into courage. So pride is like the yellow shade on this scale. If you are at the level of pride, you will see how levels of shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger bind people down. And if you're at the level of acceptance, you will realize how being at levels pride, courage, neutrality, and willingness restrain others. Dr. Hawkins points out that the two greatest spiritual milestones seem to be at level 200 and 500. So 200 is right when it goes into the color white shading, and 500 is love. And can you all read that, or do I need to read it for you? Good. I just want to make sure you can see it. Okay, very good. Love. Yes, I'm so sorry. I keep losing my space because I'm going off my notes. And Dr. Hawkins points out the 200 and the 500. 200, the level of courage, represents a profound shift from destructive and human behavior to life-promoting lifestyles. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love anyway. Think about when you're expressing courage. It's choosing forgiveness anyway. It's choosing hope anyway. It's choosing kindness anyway. And every one of those choices raises consciousness. Every one. The second great milestone is 500, love. Love in this context is a way of being in the world. It's like when you walk into the room and you're coming into that room not thinking, how are these people going to see me? Or how am I going to be judged? It's walking into a room and thinking to yourself, how may I be a blessing? Where can I shine my light? Lead me, guide me. That's what that is. So according to Dr. Hawkins, the reason the level of love is difficult to achieve, now this is according to Dr. Hawkins. I believe in unlimited ability to achieve love at any particular moment, but let me just follow what he says in his book. The reason it's difficult to achieve is because our ego is rooted in the physical domain as opposed to the spiritual domain, which emerges at 500. The 400s represent the level of reason. guided by linear, mechanistic world of form. Our modern society that includes advancements in medicine, science, government, etc. Interestingly, the top echelon of intellectual geniuses, including Einstein and Freud and Newton and Aristotle. I think it's also so interesting that those are only men that are being used in that example. Because I'm thinking maybe, no, not going there, but those, just pointing that out. All calibrated around 499. The 500s represent a very difficult hurdle that only 4% of the world's population calibrates in the 500s. This level denotes a shift from the linear, provable domain to the nonlinear, formless, spiritual realm. So as I had mentioned, having the map of consciousness, it empowers us in knowing where we stand in our current state of growth and where we desire to be. Especially based on that previous question of what really matters. What really matters? So it can provide us a bit of a roadmap to help us understand. When Hawkins wrote this book in 1995, and side note, I think it's absolutely hilarious because right about that time, I took a Bach flower essence course and they handed this consciousness level out. And at that time, I was in my 20s. At that time, I thought this had been around for a long time. I thought it was like old news. And I'm like, oh, I better study this so I can really, relate to this new world that I found myself in. I had no idea it was new. I probably would have talked about it more, but I didn't know it had just happened. But he wrote the book in 1995. And at that time, the collective consciousness of our world was to measure at the level of courage. It calibrated at 207. As humanity's consciousness is shown to increase only about 5 points every century. Oh, I know, it's like, oh boy. 207 is very likely still the figure for today. I'm hoping, because I'm kind of thinking we might have taken a little bit of a backslide, but I'm knowing that we have not, right? I'm knowing that we're going up, moving on up, because we're rising in freedom, right? But for me personally, having this map of consciousness is super helpful in identifying where I currently stand in my pursuit of growth and enlightenment and fulfillment. That's my desire. Becoming more conscious of my reactions towards life events and what they represent, understanding the level of where I want to be, allows me to up my consciousness. So up yours. And I say that in total jest because you all know I've been a teen advisor for like 30 years. And one year, many years ago, one of the teens from the Philadelphia church actually did an Up Your Consciousness t-shirt, and he brought them and gave them to all of the teens at the camp. So it's kind of a funny inside joke. Up your consciousness. So that's what we're here doing, right? We're upping our consciousness. So being conscious is more than just being physically awake. It is also more than just being aware. Awareness typically refers to knowingness at the mental level, while consciousness is a state of knowingness that encompasses all mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of ourselves. It's more. To be conscious is to have an awareness of one's thoughts, emotions, existence, sensations, surroundings. I call it deliciousness. It's delicious. Yeah, it's delicious. One of the greatest insights Hawkins offers is that consciousness is like wearing a pair of glasses. For me, it would be a pair of sunglasses because I don't wear glasses. But nothing outside changes immediately. Nothing outside changes immediately, but everything looks different. You ever looked for your sunglasses while having your sunglasses on top of your head?
Or your glasses.
Have you? Or your glasses? I've done it. So apparently enlightenment has not fully arrived yet. But spiritually, we do this constantly. We're looking for peace through the eyes of fear. We're searching for abundance through the lens of scarcity. We're asking for love while believing that we are unworthy. The world isn't typically the issue, it's the glasses. So the consciousness we operate in is actually equivalent to the lens we use to see reality. The perceptions, beliefs, mindsets, values that we hold right now are a result of the consciousness we are operating in. And whenever we experience a shift in our consciousness, like due to an epiphany and one of those aha moments or an inner realization, we are actually breaking away from our old consciousness and as a result, old belief system and attitudes. This is the same as shedding an old lens that we've used to view reality and adopting a new lens. I can literally, at times, feel myself moving into those different areas, back and forth, up and down, every moment. And when I'm aware that I'm doing it, then I can kind of guide and direct the direction that I want to be in, what really matters. So one influence on your consciousness is the stimulus of your life. This includes the situations that you're in, the type of people that you spend your time with, and your environment. In times of pressure, one's consciousness level usually gets bumped down a few levels. Do you ever think of that? Pressure. When we're under pressure. Right? Some of you did that. I just had to go there. In times of pressure, depending on how we recover from that pressure, our default consciousness level may be elevated to a high level because of that encounter. Like not permanently, but like that'll become our new set point. It moves around all the time, but our new set point. I have often heard that if you ever really want to get a glimpse of someone's internal character, have their luggage not show up on a trip. Have it get lost. And you can kind of see where that person's operating from, where they're firing from, where their engine's firing from. And that's never happened to me, knock on wood, but golly, depending on where I was going, that could be a bit difficult. But I'm really into thrift stores, so I have a feeling I'd be all right. Your consciousness level now, does not define what your consciousness level will be in the future. It's open to change. It's not static. Each person is open to move across different levels depending on how they choose to evolve their consciousness. Because guess what? We are at free will. Isn't that amazing? We get to choose. Yay! That's why I love David Hawkins's work. Not because it labels people, but because it gives us hope. His map says consciousness isn't fixed. What's going on out there is not fixed. Everybody gets to up their consciousness, right? Things can shift. Things can happen. It's fluid. Today you may react from fear, tomorrow from courage, eventually from love. No one is permanently stuck. We are always becoming. Knowing this invites tremendous compassion because everyone you meet is somewhere on the journey of this scale, including you and including me. So let's go to the next slide, please. It doesn't really matter who you used to be. What matters is who you've become. So I have a story for you. So sit back. I'm going to tell you a story about Teddy Stoddard. Anybody know Teddy Stoddard? Anybody heard that word? Okay, you have. Aha. So here's how the story goes. As she stood in front of her 5th grade class on the very first day of school, she told the children an untruth. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and said that she loved them all the same. However, that was impossible because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he did not play well with the other children, that his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath. And in addition, Teddy could be quite unpleasant. It got to the point where Mrs. Thompson would actually take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen, marking bold X's and then putting a big F at the top of his paper. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off until the very last. However, when she reviewed his file, she was in for a big surprise. Teddy's first grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child, a child ready with a laugh. He does his work neatly, he has good manners, and he is a joy to be around." His second grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he is troubled because his mother has a terminal illness, and life at home must be a struggle." His third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest, and his home life will soon affect him if some steps are not taken." Teddy's fourth grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and he sometimes sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her Christmas presents, wrapped in beautiful ribbons and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in the heavy brown paper that he got from the grocery. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the other presents, and some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing, and a bottle that was 1/4 full of perfume. But she stifled the children's laughter when she exclaimed how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbling some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. And on that very day, she quit teaching reading and writing and arithmetic. Instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy. As she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class. And despite her lie that she would love all the children the same, Teddy became one of her teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy, telling her that she was still the best teacher that he had ever had in his whole life. And 6 years went by, and she got another note from Teddy. He then wrote that he had finished high school, third in his class, and she was still the best teacher he had ever had. 4 years after that, she got another letter saying that while things had been tough at times, he stayed in school and had stuck with it and would soon graduate from college with the highest of honors. He assured Mrs. Thompson that she was still the best and favorite teacher that he had ever had his whole life. And then 4 more years passed, and another letter came. This time he explained that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go a little further. The letter explained that she was still the best and favorite teacher he had ever had, but now his name was a little longer, and the letter was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. The story does not end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring, and Teddy said that he'd met this girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago and was wondering if Mrs. Thompson would agree to sit at the wedding in the place that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson did, and guess what? She wore the bracelet, the one with the several rhinestones missing, and moreover, She made sure that she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on that last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for believing in me. Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference." Mrs. Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, and she said, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one that taught me that I could make a difference. And I didn't know how to teach until I met you." For you that don't know, Teddy Stoddard is the doctor in Iowa Methodist Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa, that has the Stoddard Cancer Wing. What a difference she made, right? So this is why Teddy Stoddard's story moves me so deeply. Mrs. Thompson didn't change Teddy's circumstances overnight. She changed the consciousness from which she looked at him. At first, she saw a problem, right? She was somewhere down there on that scale because she was actually taking a little bit of enjoyment, marking red and putting an F at the top of his paper. I shudder to think of that. Yeah. And because her consciousness rose, his life rose. Do you see how that was connected? That maybe one of the greatest principles there is, people often become who someone believes they can become. Amen. Imagine if we began looking at ourselves that way and everyone else that way. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, what wants to emerge through me? See the difference? What's wrong with me? What wants to emerge through me? The lens. Our consciousness is the lens through which we interpret reality. When consciousness rises, the world becomes less threatening. Let's all take a nice long deep breath and let it out. Because I don't know about you, but I could certainly use a big old dose of that right about now, right? Yeah. The world becomes less threatening and more meaningful, less competitive, more cooperative, less fearful, more beautiful. The circumstances may be absolutely identical. The consciousness isn't. I want to say up yours. So I guess I just did. What level of consciousness are you at right now? And which level do you find your thoughts and feelings dominating every single day? Remember that every thought, every belief, every feeling, and every action you have is rooted from the level of consciousness you're in. And when you shift your level of consciousness, you also change the worldviews and mentality. So just think of yourself. We're all going to take on Mrs. Thompson's role there. Because when we shift our consciousness, we make a huge difference in everybody's lives, including our own. Let's go to the next slide. At the end of life, what really matters is not what we bought, but what we built. It's not what we got, but what we shared. Not our competence, but our character. And not our success, but our significance. Live a life that matters. Live a life of love. So, what really matters? You get to decide. It's up to you. And just know that the quality of your life and your level of fulfillment depends on your choices. So we're going to go to the next slide. At least 3 times a day, take a moment and ask yourself what is really important. Have the wisdom and the courage to build your life around your answer. And so it is.
So it is.
Thank you.